friends, welcome to this class. We're going to paint this piece of a forest, and I did a test piece already, and I'll show you the pictures under the post. I was thinking, like, how do I explain the process best? And I think it's just the overall capturing the colors and then adding on top of that the trees. Now, what do I mean by like capturing the colors overall? So the best thing you can do is, when you look at the reference, squint your eyes and see the patches of colors. Overall, I'm thinking yellow colors, very warm, or make it warmer than what I see in the reference. This is my flat 40 brush, Raczynska. So I'm going to dip the brush in water, and then I'm going to bring some water onto the paper. At first, I drop a lot of water. You don't always see it, but I want to make a point about it because I got some questions like how wet. The beginning is like, doesn't matter how much water you bring onto the paper. You just want that water to be absorbed inside of the paper. It's the end of it, like right before you're ready to apply the colors. That's when it matters how much water is on top of that paper. And you don't want puddles. So I'm going to grab actually a little more water. I want that blue. I was talking about that highlight and something bluish in the background. This is where we have the roots. Why not? So a little more of that quin red and cobalt blue. So what's happening is, just because I'm coming here and adding these colors, the blue and the red, I keep my paper wet longer because I went right away to the bottom. I don't need to really focus on painting this part yet, because it's more about right now the top part where I have the yellows in the trees and so on. Now, it is a good idea to have a larger space for your colors. This is a Butcher palette by Holbein. Just think of like the yellow in general, water to milk-like ratio. Now, this is the moment when you want to squint your eyes. We're gonna squint our eyes, and this is the raw umber, all the yellows, basically all the yellows with a little bit of red, right? And wherever with your squinted eyes you can spot the most of that yellow, go for it. So place it there. Of course, go over the trees. Trees are going to be added later. Doesn't matter right now. To capture more of these branches, all the yellows that we see there. So this is it, pretty much. This area needs to stay as light as possible. And let's see, maybe a little bit here. Now I'm going to go for this part. So the bottom, I just grabbed some raw sienna. I'm going to grab more of that raw umber too. Quinacridone red, the yellows. And go for this, all this foliage, the bottom part. Right now, it's the overall. We don't need to like capture leaves that we see in there. We're going to go with like a half and half like ratio. This is burnt sienna. So as you see, I'm not going here. This is too wet. As a matter of fact, what I could do is use a paper towel and remove some of that water. So now it makes it a little easier to understand the ratios. It's a little thicker. I feel I actually removed too much, but worst comes to worst, all I have to do is grab some water, right? And then some raw umber, and then there's my Van Dyke brown, a little more water, definitely. Not too thick. I still want it to be like a half and half. However, this should be maybe even heavy cream-like ratio. So feel it out, because what's happening on your paper will be different compared to my paper. And just keep mixing colors on the paper. So this is the foliage. We do want the paints to spread though. Now, what I like the color mix is this one here, which is cobalt blue, quinacridone red. That's one of my favorites. And then Van Dyke brown. I love this shade. So that alone will give you a little look of these like shadows. So not everywhere. You want to always think about where you're placing these colors. So we see shadows more on the bottom here. So I'm going to grab more heavy cream-like ratio at this point. And there's my Van Dyke brown and indigo. And now you can see how much darker this becomes. So just like you see in the reference, like you don't see these darker tones everywhere, right? These are shadows in between like the leaves or underneath the leaves. So just kind of like in a chunkier way, just apply it, but I need some more browns. I'm actually grabbing burnt sienna, and not everywhere. So I'm gonna think about like whatever I want to show some of this foliage. What is the ratio? I'd say it's more like between half and half and heavy cream-like ratio between wet and paint. Now you want to do this part actually wet on wet. So try your best to apply these colors before the paper dries. More of the yellows. I still have not washed my brush or cleaned my brush yet. Just the overall, I want some more foliage. Maybe here I should go back with cleaner yellows in just a second. So as we see in the reference, kind of like this, as long as I don't lose this light here, because I really want to show that there's that glimpse of, or the opening, like a window. So now I'm thinking like, what else do I need to add before this dries? Because the paper is drying. So what we could do, for example, is grab like thicker paint and just add some trees in the background with this heavier ratio. So this has to be like a creamy paint, cream top. I just grabbed with the tip of my brush of this round 3, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna, cobalt blue. So this is creamy paint and just adding some branches, all like wet on wet basically. So this will look more like it's out of focus. If you want to add them like in the background and your paper is still wet, then do it like this, wet on wet. Now you can also add branches like this in between. What else can we add here? I'm going to grab some burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown. So this is still wet, means I can still work a little more on these roots, for example. So how about like some blue and some darks, basically some shadows, just so we can show there's those roots, and heavy cream to cream top like ratio between wet and paint. So more of it, and there's this tree here, so technically this one would have some roots here, although all this part here should be much lighter, this little path, right? Rigger size 2. So with the rigger, I can grab again this blue. Well, I don't have much blue, but let's say Van Dyke brown and phthalo blue, or indigo, and just adding some extra foliage, but this time using a rigger brush. So again, tinier pieces would be here, but I don't want to make it too dark. So that means I'll have to change the colors if I want to go in the front here. But with the rigger brush, it is easy to lift. So if you want to lift anything, you would lift with a damp brush if you want to show something going on in there. Hi friends, welcome back. So everything dried. Now, before I move on to like painting the trunks, I want to add some more foliage, and we're going to do it wet on dry. I'm going to use a softer brush. This is my round 8 golden tube brush. It's a softer brush, and I'm going to mix the colors just like here on the paper mostly. And it's just kind of like painting some of the leaves. So let's see, for example, like something maybe higher there. I'm gonna grab some imidazolone yellow. I re-wetted my palette, so everything is kind of easier to grab now. So this is like all the yellows. And for example, and I do actually want quite a bit of water with it. So this is more like water like ratio. And let's say I want to add some more here just to make it a little more yellowish. So it's kind of very quickly touching the paper and moving on like to the other areas. Let's say I want some more here, more of the yellows with this blue, even like this burnt sienna. If you add more Van Dyke brown, that'll be nice too. I just grabbed some cobalt blue again, because we do need shadows. No matter what, we need shadows. All right, so what I'm going to do is re-wet a little bit the bottom part here. This is a softer brush, my long quill size 4. Just wet it softly. And I touched what I just painted here the foliage, but I need water here too. And so I'm gonna grab these yellows with some burnt sienna here. This is my long cool size 4 in case I haven't mentioned it yet. And I'm starting with these yellow tones just like in the reference, or in the reference like before. Make it a little more yellowish. So yellows plus burnt sienna. I didn't add second layer in my test piece. So all the colors, raw sienna, burnt sienna, indigo. Not as much in here in this foreground. And then we have these trees, one tree and the other tree. So now it's becoming darker, right? Compared to the first layer. It seemed like at first it was dark, but then everything dried and it was not as dark anymore. Now grab that thick paint, and then we have this piece here. There's no more branch, but well, it's a piece of it. We can do that, and then we can find another one somewhere here. And the same thing here. So there's the two trees. So again, you can add some darks on the inside because the tree wouldn't be like perfectly smooth. I'm waiting for things to dry and so I can paint these trees. So for now, I'm going to walk away from it and let it dry. Alright, my friends, let's start working on the trees. This is not 100% dry yet, but I can start working on some of these trees. So what I'm going to do is wet the entire trunk, but I'm only going to apply colors in some areas. So follow me along with this, or watch first, and then you will know exactly how we're going to do this. So wetting, and then I'm going to start with a bluish undertone. So there's my cobalt blue. Let's see the light. So the left side needs to be darker actually, or this one is so shadowed anyway. So like the sun is coming through, and the trees are affected in different ways. So let's just add it from both sides. So here I'm going up, but I'm not going to add paint everywhere because I want to show that there's those branches or the foliage. So now I'm going to grab some of this, all this yellow basically. Colors of the trunk are kind of like brownish and yellow-ish. And then we're just gonna add it in some areas. So you don't want to just add it everywhere. Something like that. So we don't need to finish it all the way. So here I'm just gonna use a damp brush, but I'm not applying these colors everywhere. And now I'm gonna grab Van Dyke Brown, burnt sienna, some indigo, and just like I see the shadows in some areas, but I need way more paint. So first it was like a water to milk like ratio, and now this feels more like a heavy cream. And I'm just gonna add it in some places only. Although this trunk seems quite shadowed, but I don't need to add it everywhere. A little more of that brown. All right, I'm gonna clean the brush in here. I think that's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna clean the brush and then grab this burnt sienna with some imidazolone yellow. And let's add this nice shade. This should be like a water to milk like ratio too, actually, so it spreads. Everything spreads here. Go slow. I know I'm going fast. That's because I'm used to it, right? But if you're not used to painting wet on wet, you're not used to these undertones, like painting with undertones and so on, take your time. Go, maybe a little more here. Pay attention to light and shadows. That is very important. I grabbed some brush by accident here. And then left side, I'm adding it actually on the left side here. So the two more trees. I feel like I'm painting them slightly different than my test piece. And that's okay. Doesn't have to be the same. But this is my Van Dyke Brown. Van Dyke Brown should be burnt sienna indigo. Try your best to mix colors on the paper. And then more of the indigo if I want to make it darker. And I do want to make it darker on the left side. Go slightly touching like the edges here with the tip of my brush. And this is the area. It's a little confusing with the colors, but as long as we have that contrast between light and shadows. The tree trunk is a little looking funny, but I guess I can fix it. And then let's see, what else can we add? There's some branches here and there. In between, so you wouldn't finish, like if you're adding a branch, you wouldn't go through the whole thing. You kind of break it to show that there is foliage in between. We can go back to this one too. Yeah, these branches do feel a little darker, don't they? I'm gonna use this color to add some foliage here. Let's see what else. Maybe a little more of that indigo, just to add it on this edge here. And then the second, what we can do is add some more foliage, actually even more foliage. Not line, but like a branch. So we need to show that there's some of these branches. Now something like this can take longer to paint because of all these little leaves. So yes, there's different brushes you can use for that to speed up the process, but if you don't mind, just take some time painting these. Maybe here, maybe something here. There you go. And that's pretty much it for this painting. We're just playing now with some more foliage, to add more foliage. And if you're into like specifically working like painting forest scenes, then you'll see that everything kind of becomes easier, and you have all these ideas like of your own techniques, like how to add a branch, how to paint a branch, how to add some foliage. Everything kind of start to make sense, just like with anything else. And that's it. I just have to remove the salt. I don't think there's much happening here because this was second layer granulated colors, so I'm just gonna call it done for now. And yeah, so thank you so much for your time. Let me know if you have any questions.